So, believe it or not, this isn't the first video we've made about this exact topic. Jonathan Toews and the Boston Bruins. This is the second time around. So, if you do feel a little bit of deja vu, then hey, that's not unreasonable. So, let's revisit the topic again because it was brought up on an episode of, was it the 32 Thoughts podcast or was it the Jeff Merrick show? I believe it was the 32 Thoughts pod. Yeah, that's what it was. Talking about these two teams, this individual player, and how exactly things could potentially align. We're going over on NHL Watcher's Twitter account because they tweeted out the quote, Jeff Merrick on the 32 Thoughts podcast wonders if Jonathan Toews, who would be able to call his shot, would be a good fit in Boston if Patrice Bergeron retires. It's a simple tweet, it's a simple quote, simple thought, but I do feel there is a lot more depth to this kind of conversation than just the surface level stuff. So let's go over the Boston Bruins, let's go over Toews, let's go over the Blackhawks as well. Jonathan Toews is an expiring star. He's making $10.5 million a season till the end of 2023. He's 35 years old, 6'2", 201, a left-handed guy, and for a good part of the past decade, Jonathan Toews has been one of the better two-way players in the entire National Hockey League. Good on faceoffs, his nickname is Captain Serious, he's a stoic guy, he's a leader on the ice, and he's got a Selke to his name. Not to mention the fact that he's a three-time Stanley Cup champion, that also should not go undisputed. Jonathan Toews has had a very decorated National Hockey League career. The reason Merrick is suggesting Toews over to Boston, if Toews goes out there and calls his own shot, is quite simple. Patrice Bergeron is not guaranteed to come back, at least at the time of me recording this audio. It's May 19th, Thursday, 5:57 p.m., so if there is indeed a Bergeron re-signing that goes on, then hey, this video's information is incorrect. However, I do want to propose the idea that maybe Bergeron coming back should not dissuade this Toews thing from being on or off the board. The Boston Bruins have needed a second-line center for a while now. Unfortunately, Charlie Coyle is not that guy. Ever since David Krejci left, and it's actually kind of funny because there were some highlights of the World Championships earlier in the week of Krejci and Pastrnak making some very good plays to each other, and I know a lot of Boston fans were just kind of tearing up seeing that go down because, yeah, Krejci, still very effective, still very offensively potent hockey player right there, but the fact is he's not in Boston anymore. There were some conversations going around saying David Krejci actually wants a legit winger to play with, that he doesn't have a natural goal scorer like a David Pastrnak is. They actually play really well together, it's just Bruce Cassidy did not want to use them together during the time they shared in B-Town. Instead, you had two playmakers in Krejci and Hall projected to play with each other, which wasn't really the best kind of combination, and so Krejci just said, screw it, I'm going home. Now, that's his decision, and he's definitely in a position to go ahead and do that. He is well respected in Boston, and I know a lot of Bruins fans love Krejci to death, but there was that second-line center hole already after his departure that just wasn't filled up by whoever the Boston Bruins had stepping up in their lineup. Furthermore, you had all the other depth forwards, the Folignos of the world, the lack of prospects. It's really rough in Boston when it comes to the long-term projectability of the talent on the team, aside from, of course, Marchand and Pastrnak. Which is why this Toews thing makes a lot of sense to me, even if you disregard the idea of whether or not Bergeron is going to come back or not. If Bergeron does indeed decide to leave, the Bruins are pretty much screwed when it comes to their immediate center core, and they're gonna have to shell out some money anyway to get somebody who can replace the minutes and the defensive load that Bergeron is capable of handling. Jonathan Toews, while I don't doubt he would not show up for that role, I don't know if he is necessarily the guy to fully take on that kind of commitment. He had a career year 3 seasons ago, 81 points in 82 games played in 2018-19, and he had 60 points in 70 games the year after that. Add on to that a point-per-game postseason, including the play-in series win over Edmonton, and you have yourselves a really good player, but his 2020-2021 was riddled with an entire year off. He came back this season getting 37 points in 71 games. He really wasn't the same caliber of player that he had been before, and he's making $10.5 million a year. If he does get traded somewhere else, like Boston for example, the Chicago Blackhawks firstly would need to retain so much of that salary just to make it go through. The Bruins would need to free up just a little bit of money just to make sure they're able to get the retained Jonathan Toews, and they would need to be really certain as to where they're going to play this guy. I'm not too sure if Jonathan Toews can still be a first-line caliber center, even though he was 3 years removed from a very good point-per-game year. He missed out on a full year of play, and this year he declined quite noticeably. He is already 34 years old, so is this really the guy that you want to say is going to fill in and do what Bergeron, a probable Selke winner this season, was able to do this year? I'm not too sure. I do still think the Bruins would have to go out there and shell out a little bit more money and find somebody else if Bergeron does not return. However, if Bergeron does indeed return, and you have yourselves the potential of having Bergeron and Toews at the same time, that ultimately to me says the best win-win scenario over here, because you wouldn't need to be forcing Toews to take on those first-line minutes. You can have really good two-way stability on both of your top lines, and you could use the offensive weaponry that Toews has in a very effective way alongside a Taylor Hall and whoever else you want to put on that right wing. Now, obviously, a move like this isn't really one that you want to do if you're preparing for the long term. The Bruins, as we noted, don't have the best prospect pool. They don't have the best acclimation of youth, I guess, into their lineup. And pretty much everything that's going on with the Bees when it comes to Bergeron and Pastrnak and any acquisitions they've been making over the past little while here, it's all been trying to give themselves another chance at winning a Stanley Cup, making the finals like they did in 2019, and hopefully giving Bergeron one last hoorah before he rides off into the sunset, which may or may not be this year. So there is a legitimate concern that you could have saying, Lego, why would the Bruins even do this? Why would they trade away more picks? Why would they trade away more prospects? If they lose out on Bergeron, then that's it. They have to go out there and start retooling. They can no longer make these moves to try to remain competitive now, especially if they're trading with Boston, who is definitely already on that rebuilding starting path. So they're going to be asking for picks, they're going to be asking for prospects. The limited prospect sample that the Bruins do have will probably be at play here, and a lot of Bruins fans might say that that's not what they would want to see. And that's a fair assessment. Of course, you can't go out there and expect your team to just do everything for the immediate short-term future, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge that Sweeney has not really had the best drafting track record, nor has he had the best long-term plan, it seems. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe you can go into the comments and tell me whether or not my assessment is accurate or not. But either way, let me know in the comments all your thoughts about this idea of Jonathan Toews potentially going to the Boston Bruins. Should he say, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm done with Chicago, we lose too much, I've got 1 year left, I can waive my no-move clause, it's no big deal, I can get traded and get you guys a whole bunch of assets so that you don't lose me for nothing by the time my career ends off in the sunset as well. If you're a Chicago fan, what do you think about the idea of trading away Jonathan Toews? This is not the same as trading away Patrick Kane. Kane is still as good as he's ever been, and we saw that this season. He is absolutely phenomenal. But for Toews, there was a decline, which I do think is noticeable enough to the point that you can start to think about him in a different way, although the question also is whether or not that decline is as big of a decline to make a Boston Bruins team that needs a center core not interested anymore. Obviously, if Toews was saying, yeah, I want to go to Boston, I don't think they would say no. But you can let me know in the comments all your thoughts about what a return should be, the situation, the salary cap, etc. I'd say retain 50% because, I mean, $10.5 million is a lot of money, even if it is only for 1 year, but they still are definitely things I think you need to acknowledge. So, talk to me in the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this British Troll 9, and bye.